I think the title of the video is self-explanatory and doesn't really need much of an introduction, so I'll keep it short. Yeah, we're going to explore the 25 most terrifying werewolf transformations across different formats like movies, TV shows, and even animation. Oh, and probably wouldn't find a lot of werewolves from shows like Vampire Diaries and movies like Twilight, but you'll find stuff like the original Wolfman, Ginger Snaps, Dog Soldiers, etc. Another side note, we've curated the list while being a bit biased towards the lycanthropes who were brought to life using special effects and didn't use a lot of CGI. So yeah, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Wolfman Transformation, an American Werewolf in London, 1981. In John Landis's horror comedy, two American friends backpacking through Europe take an unexpected detour into terror. After a brutal attack by a mysterious beast, one of them ends up dead, and the other discovers he's turning into a werewolf. The transformation scene, masterfully brought to life by makeup legend Rick Baker, is one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest, and has earned Baker the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup for its raw, on-screen metamorphoses. And yeah, the man truly deserved it. What sets the American Werewolf transformation apart is its crazy realism. Instead of cutting to dramatic moonshots or hiding the changes behind closed doors, the film keeps you front and center. You watch in real time as David's extremities painfully contort into wolfish paws and his face stretches into a feral snout, all in the quaint setting of his girlfriend's English apartment. David Norton, who played the transforming werewolf, shared that the process was as intense off-screen as it was on-screen. The prosthetics work was suffocating and required precise molds of his limbs and head. The claustrophobic experience had Norton questioning the expertise of Baker's team, though his fears were unfounded as they navigated the complex makeup job with skill. Filming the transformation was an arduous task. It took a whole week, with Norton spending long hours in makeup for just a few seconds of film, but the effort was undeniably worth it. Rick Baker's groundbreaking effects set a new standard in horror, making the scene a benchmark for werewolf transformations and showcasing the power of practical effects in filmmaking. Dog Soldiers, 2002. Terrifying transformation. When it comes to the best practical effects and werewolf suits in horror films, Dog Soldiers tops my list without hesitation. This film isn't so much about deep character exploration like An American Werewolf in London. It's more of a high-octane werewolf thriller that thrusts a military squad into a battle for survival against a ferocious family of lycanthropes in the Scottish Highlands. The movie cleverly uses the setup similar to Night of the Living Dead, where the main characters are barricaded in an old farmhouse, besieged by relentless werewolves. As the tension escalates, each soldier faces a gruesome fate, leaving viewers to wonder who, if anyone, will make it out alive. Dog Soldiers might be a bit tough to see at times due to its darker scenes, but it shines with thrilling action sequences and standout werewolf designs. The creatures in this film are strikingly eerie with their unnaturally long, thin limbs and humanoid bodies that tower intimidatingly, yet their heads are purely wolf, not a blend of human and beast, adding to their otherworldly and terrifying presence. This design choice sets the werewolves apart, giving them a distinctly alien aura that really sticks with you. Larry Talbot, The Wolfman, 1941. In the early 1930s, Universal Studios was trying to come up with a werewolf movie and drew inspiration from French loup-garou legends. Originally titled The Werewolf, the film was set to star Boris Karloff, with makeup artist Jack Pierce tailoring a werewolf look to match Karloff's robust build. However, by 1935, the project evolved into Werewolf of London, with actor Henry Hull stepping into the role initially meant for Karloff. This casting change required Pierce to modify his makeup design to fit Hull's slimmer frame and ensure that Hull's character, Dr. Glendon, was still recognizable even when transformed into a werewolf. Despite the shift, Pierce was somewhat disappointed with the final outcome of Werewolf of London. Yet, the next decade offered him a chance to revisit and refine his original werewolf concept with a new project, The Wolfman. This time, Lon Chaney Jr., who shared Karloff's sturdy physique, was cast as the lead, allowing Pierce to resurrect his initial makeup design. Chaney's portrayal had less extensive makeup, focusing primarily on his face and hands, which were complemented by a chest appliance and foot extensions that mimicked wolf-like feet. The design was similar and more human-like, which made the Wolfman appear fully clothed and more relatable in his scenes. The makeup process for the Wolfman was meticulous and labor-intensive. Pierce would start each session by carefully placing yak hair strand by strand, a technique that required up to 2.5 hours each morning. The hair was then curled, singed, and burnt to give it a wild, natural look. Werewolf Transformation, The Howling, 1981. In 1981, The Howling set a new benchmark for werewolf cinema under the direction of Joe Dante and the creative vision of John Sayles, who reimagined Gary Brandner's original novel. The collaboration between Dante and Sayles, which began with their work on Piranha, blossomed as they undertook the challenge of overhauling the Howling script to breathe new life into it. Unlike other films of the era, Dante dismissed the idea of using real wolves to portray the werewolves, finding them too mundane and lacking the fantastical element needed for his vision. He aimed to depict the werewolves as monstrous humanoid creatures, enhancing the film's dark nightmarish quality. Initially, Rick Baker was tapped for the creature effects, having been earmarked for An American Werewolf in London by John Landis. When Baker found himself juggling commitments, he suggested Rob Bottin take over the hands-on work for The Howling, while he remained as a design consultant. This setup allowed Bottin to explore innovative transformation effects, pushing the boundaries of what had been done before. Now, if you must know, Rob Bottin has been involved with some really cool movie monsters, including John Carpenter's The Thing. The team, including Bottin and Baker, opted against using traditional lap dissolve techniques for the transformation scenes. Instead, they explored more dynamic methods, including the use of inflatable air bladders. This technique allowed for more gruesome and realistic transformations on screen and effectively set a new standard for special effects. Bottin led a large team, leveraging his full creative freedom to orchestrate the groundbreaking transformation sequences. The effects were not just about visual shock, but about crafting an experience that felt both terrifying and real. Ginger Snaps Werewolf Transformation, 2000. Ginger Snaps is pretty much a typical high school movie, just that it has werewolves. But no, it doesn't really have rich and elegant werewolves like the ones from Twilight, and is filled with more raw, unapologetic terror. It centers around two sisters, Ginger and Brigitte, who are more fascinated with death than the typical teenage dramas. Their lives take a jog to the south when Ginger, played by Catherine Isabelle, gets bitten by a werewolf. This catapults her into a world of intense animal-like urges, which was in stark contrast to her previous personality. As Ginger becomes increasingly aggressive, her quieter sister Brigitte, portrayed by Emily Perkins, frantically searches for a cure to stop the transformation before Ginger tears their suburb apart. The film cleverly uses the werewolf transformation as a metaphor for the tumultuous changes of adolescence and manages to give a fine dose of horror, drama, and dark humor. Drawing inspiration from the grotesque transformations of Cronenberg, the classic werewolf lore from John Landis's American Werewolf in London, Ginger Snaps basically transplants the werewolf myth into the suburbs, kinda like the way Fright Night revamped vampire tales. The film turned Catherine Isabelle into a genre icon, which led to sequels and roles in other notable horror projects, like American Mary. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of great scenes as far as the transformation is concerned, but as a movie, well, you should definitely check it out. Quint's uber-lycan transformation, Underworld, The Awakening, 2012. 6 months following the events of the previous film, we find a purge in action with the intent to wipe out vampires and lycans. Celine finds herself captured and awakens from a 12-year slumber in cryogenic suspension at the Antigen Medical Corporation, which publicizes its mission as developing a cure for the virus turning humans into vampires and lycans. Once free, Celine experiences mysterious visions that she believes connect her to Michael Corvin, her lycan-vampire hybrid lover. These visions draw her to a building where she meets David, a vampire ally. During a conversation with David, Celine has another vision which leads her to a young girl named Eve, who turns out to be a hybrid and her daughter. They seek refuge at David's coven. However, the reception is less than warm. David's father, Thomas, accuses Celine of causing Michael's death and the downfall of their clan. It's revealed that Dr. Jacob Lane, the head of Antigen, is secretly a lycan, as is his son, Quint. Their so-called antidote is actually a concoction meant to shield lycans from the lethal effects of silver. To perfect it, they need Eve's unique hybrid genetic makeup. The lycans storm the vampire coven in search of Eve, led by Quint, who's become a monstrous super lycan due to experimental treatments with Eve's blood. This behemoth stands as a towering, hulking version of a werewolf, infused with the Corvinus strain, which basically makes him far stronger and more formidable than any ordinary lycan. This genetically modified uber-lycan was designed by Steve Wang and based on a Tatapoulos concept and was brought to life through digital effects that enhance its fur-covered appearance. I really like the transformation scene, even if I didn't quite appreciate the movie. Quint to uber-lycan takes nearly 20 seconds, and every second of his transformation is worth watching the movie itself. Half vampire, half werewolf. Underworld franchise. Michael Corvin was the first ever hybrid. a mix of a werewolf and a vampire. Celine bites him in order to save his life, and in the process, converts him into the hybrid. He was essentially a lycan, as in his base was that of a lycan, but he received some vampiric traits. Transformation-wise, it was nothing too extreme, and he retained a more humanoid form compared to the other entries on the list. But yeah, as a hybrid, he had the powers of both the species. A lycan-dominant hybrid leans more towards its werewolf roots in appearance and abilities. Michael had completely black eyes and a slightly elongated face. His ribcage was subtly extended, and his skin took on a dark bluish hue with minimal to no fur. True to his lycan heritage, he had the wolf-like roar, animalistic posture, claws, and teeth of a werewolf. On the flip side, a vampire-dominant hybrid exhibits features that hint at their vampiric ancestry. They share the lycan's black eyes and muscular build, but also have bat-like ears, a nose reminiscent of a bat, and no hair. Their skin is also bluish, and some even sport taloned retractable wings. Marcus Corvinus, the original vampire and a formidable figure in his own right, is like the textbook example of this hybrid type. His powers are so extensive that it's unclear whether other vampire-dominant hybrids would share his level of strength. Then there's the neutral hybrid, a natural blend born from the union of a vampire and a lycan. Love, Death and Robots, Season 1, Episode 10, Werewolves Transformation. In a world where werewolves are just another minority facing discrimination, two werewolf Marines, Lieutenant Decker and Sergeant Sobieski, find themselves in the conflict zones of Afghanistan. Their enhanced senses prove useful during a Taliban ambush, which allowed Decker to pinpoint the enemy's location. Next thing we know, their Unit's 30 cal mounted on a Humvee responded, and the bad guys were taken down with immediate effect. Back at the base, not all their comrades appreciate their abilities or presence, often giving Decker and Sobieski a hard time. Things escalate when Sobieski gets assigned to a lone watchtower duty. That evening, disaster strikes as the firebase comes under heavy attack. From his position, Decker realizes immediately that the situation is dire and that waiting for backup could mean certain death for his friend and the other stationed troops. Acting on instinct, Decker dashes across the desert to reach the watchtower within minutes, only to find Sobieski and the others mercilessly killed, seemingly by another werewolf. Major Rayner gives Decker a new mission: track down and capture the rogue Taliban werewolf responsible for the massacre. That night, under the cover of darkness, Decker ventures alone into the desert. He encounters an old man and a younger companion, both of whom transform into werewolves before his eyes, but Decker manages to subdue both. As far as the werewolf transformations are concerned, the episode more or less nailed it. I mean, it was animation after all, and you get more freedom to play with things. Yet the vision was commendable. Much like the Van Helsing transformation, these three werewolves also shed their skin. Well, more like rip it apart to reveal their werewolf forms. Van Helsing turns into a werewolf. Van Helsing, 2004. Abraham Van Helsing, the fearless monster hunter, went on an adventure in the 19th century Transylvania, accompanied by his clever sidekick, the friar, named Karl. Their mission was to hunt down and destroy the ultimate fiend, Count Dracula, joining forces with Anna Valerius, the last of a storied Romanian clan and a determined vampire slayer herself. They're set on bringing peace to her family by defeating Dracula once and for all. Oh, and there was a bit of a redemption arc for Van Helsing. Needless to say, their journey is anything but straightforward. They face an army of undead minions, the creation of Dr. Victor Frankenstein, the super annoying brides of Dracula, and the ferocious Wolfman. Together, these obstacles form a barrier to their heroic goal, but the group can't stop, for it'd mean, well, the end of the world. Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing had a pretty interesting transformation in this monstrous world, as he simply tore away his human skin to reveal the beast inside. Unlike the previous entry, this was, of course, all VFX. As the werewolf, he was this towering, muscle-bound creature that nearly reached 8 feet tall. Covered in thick black fur, he also had razor-sharp teeth and claws, ready to rip into anything. Now, I must agree that Van Helsing isn't the greatest of vampire films, or even werewolf films for that matter. But you have to remember that the movie was released back in 2004, and did some amazing things as far as the visuals were concerned. I mean, I loved the final form of the vampire at the end, and the fight sequence itself lasted for about 10 minutes. I'd watch Van Helsing again just for that, if not for Hugh Jackman. Male Werewolf Transformation, The Company of Wolves, 1984. In The Company of Wolves, co-written by Jordan and Angela Carter, the classic tale of Red Riding Hood morphs into a haunting, dreamlike coming-of-age story. The film anchors itself in the present day with young Rosaline, on the brink of womanhood who drifts into sleep only to dream of a different life. In her dreams, she's transported back to a fairy tale version of the 18th century, where tragedy strikes her family when her sister Alice is killed by wolves. Seeking solace, Rosaline stays with her granny, who passes the time knitting a red shawl and sharing sharing eerie tales of men who are not all they seem, warning of their darker, more primal sides. Meanwhile, Rosaline offers a counterpoint with her own stories that portray werewolves in a more empathetic light and challenges her grandmother's tales of all this cautioning and warnings. The film doesn't shy away from the macabre. For instance, one of Granny's stories talks about a young groom who transforms into a werewolf on his wedding night and disappears into the night. Years later, he returns, only to find his former bride with a new family, which drowns him in rage. He starts ripping off his human skin to reveal the beast within. The werewolf transformations, which were brought to life by makeup artist Christopher Tucker, are a highlight, and may be the only highlight of the film. Clearly, Tucker prefers quadrupedal, true-to-nature wolves over the typical bipedal wolfman. His commitment to authenticity shines bright in the elaborate 6-stage transformation process for the young groom, starting with subtle changes and escalating to a fully realized wolf, all achieved through advanced animatronics that push the boundaries of what could be expected on a shoestring budget. Despite its financial constraints, the Company of Wolves should be lauded for its inventive approach to the werewolf legend. These guys were not just mythical creatures, beings who were simply powerful, terrifying, and evil, but they also had lives that were tragically beautiful. Hemlock Grove TV series Wolf Transformation. Set in Hemlock Grove, Pennsylvania, a town divided by wealth and poverty, the series starts off with a murder mystery to be precise. Once a bustling steel town, Hemlock Grove has seen better days, with most folks now finding work at either the Godfrey Institute for Biomedical Technologies or Hemlock Acres Hospital. The institute, led by the enigmatic Olivia Godfrey, is shrouded in rumors of dark experiments, while her brother-in-law, Dr. Norman Godfrey, runs the psychiatric ward at the hospital. Things spiral down in Season 1 when the town is rocked by the brutal killings of 2 teenage girls, whose bodies are displayed for the world to see the following day. Suspicion falls on 17-year-old Peter Rumenchek, a Romany newcomer rumored to be a werewolf. Little do the townsfolk know, the rumors are true. Teaming up with Roman Godfrey, the brooding heir to the Godfrey fortune, Peter starts walking down a path that would lead him and the others to discover the town's darkest secrets. Now, about the transformation. Well, in my opinion, it's like a breath of fresh air. There's no skin peeling as such or just random hair growth. The werewolf in Peter actually lives a monster within and comes to the fore in the most gruesome of ways. There's even a hand that comes out of the werewolf's mouth, and it's nothing like you've seen before. Bad Moon Werewolf Transformations, 1996. If you're scouring for an underrated gem in werewolf cinema, look no further than Bad Moon. This film might start off sounding like a family-friendly flick, with its setup of a single mum and her sharp-witted son living in the woods, only to have the world turned upside down by a visit from their werewolf uncle. But make no mistake, this isn't your run-of-the-mill werewolf tale. Right from the start, Bad Moon goes for the jugular with a steamy sex scene and quickly escalates to a bloodbath where a werewolf tears through a campsite, culminating in its head getting blasted off with a shotgun. This explosive opening delivers a clear message: expect a wild, campy ride. The film embraces its over-the-top nature, blending horror with a hefty dose of camp and fun, much like a Peter Jackson thrill ride. Interestingly, the real hero of the story might just be the family's oversized, fiercely protective German shepherd. He's the first to figure out who the real monster is, which leads to a battle of wits between dog and wolf. Bad Moon packs in plenty of action and gore, supported by some impressively melodramatic performances that only add to its charm. Let's talk about the werewolf itself. The suit is a standout, a marvel of practical effects that makes you wonder why they even bothered with the less impressive CGI during transformation scenes. One thing of note was that the transformation doesn't really seem very painful for the dude, at least in the beginning. But yeah, the CGI thing kinda messed up a really great practical effects job. Late Phases Werewolf Transformation, 2014. Ambrose McKinley, a blind ex-soldier, settles into a retirement community next to a forest with his trusty seeing-eyed dog. However, adventure and horror strike at his door once again as his neighbor, Dolores, is savagely attacked and killed by a mysterious creature on the very night they meet. Ambrose himself faces off against the beast, saved only by the efforts of his dog, who tragically doesn't survive the encounter. The police chalk it up to a wild animal, but Ambrose, with his military instincts, suspects a more sinister predator is at play. His suspicions lead him to uncover that a werewolf is terrorizing the neighborhood. As the plot thickens, Ambrose finds himself in a deadly game of cat and mouse, tracking down the creature responsible for the terror. The climax of the film delivers a pretty awesome transformation scene where we see a man morph into a werewolf. This transformation is a visual treat, celebrated for its impressive old-school effects that steer clear of heavy CGI. To be honest, it added a great deal of tactile authenticity to the horror. The creature design was pretty effective in showing a werewolf brought to life with practical makeup rather than digital effects, which adds a raw, visceral feel to the horror. These days, people rely a lot on CGI, unless you're someone like Nolan, but seeing practical effects put to good use in late phases was a very welcome move. This approach not only maintains the film's eerie atmosphere, but also strengthens the viewer's emotional connection to the story. The film argues that sometimes the old ways, especially in horror, are the best ways. Wolf Cop, 2014. Lou Garou, a less than stellar cop with a penchant for alcohol, finds himself embroiled in a bizarre case in the sleepy town of Woodhaven. Known for spending his days either snoozing at the station or propping up the bar at Jessica's local watering hole, Lou becomes the person of interest when he's dispatched to investigate claims of occult activities near his buddy Willie Higgins' gun shop. Initially skeptical, he dismisses the complaints as just another heavy metal fan gathering. However, he's compelled by his chief to take a second look. This time, Lou stumbles upon a group of occultists caught in the act of attempting to sacrifice a reformist politician. The scene quickly goes south, and Lou is knocked out cold, only to wake up the next morning in his own bed with a pentagram carved into his stomach and no memory of the night before. Suddenly, Lou finds his senses are unnaturally sharp, and his wounds heal almost instantly. As he digs deeper into the strange case, he begins to impress those around him, including Jessica and his colleagues, who had long since written him off. While reviewing his notes at Jessica's bar, she tries to ply him with drinks and, stuff. However, their plans don't turn into a reality when two gang members barge in and attack him in the bathroom. Mid-transformation into a werewolf, Lou easily dispatches one and scares off the other. Lou wakes up handcuffed to a bed at Higgins' place. It turns out Higgins restrained him for his own safety, suspecting something supernatural at play. Together, they uncover that the occult ritual Lou disrupted was meant to empower reptilian shapeshifters through the sacrifice of a werewolf. Now, when was the last time you saw a penis turn into a werewolf penis? That's it. I'll say no more. Just that you gotta watch it with a bunch of friends and a few chilled ones. Fright Night Werewolf Transformation, 1985. Before Buffy and the slew of teen dramas with a supernatural twist, there was Fright Night, which melded the John Hughes teen formula with full-on monster madness. The film, still a fan favorite, features the charming William Ragsdale, who starts to believe that his neighbor, played by Chris Sarandon, is a vampire with a sinister plan involving his girlfriend. Ragsdale's character enlists his beloved late-night TV horror host, played by the legendary Roddy McDowall, to help combat the undead threat. Although Fright Night might feel a bit dated compared to some of its 80s counterparts, it holds up significantly better than the 2011 remake. Sure, Stephen Jeffries' portrayal of Evil Ed can get under some viewers' skin, but the film remains a heartfelt homage to the horror classics. A fun fact about the film's behind-the-scenes efforts includes the grueling makeup process for Evil Ed's wolf transformation, which took a whopping 18 hours to complete. In a slightly horrifying mix-up, the crew accidentally started pouring prosthetic adhesive instead of methyl cellulose into Jeffrey's mouth to simulate drool, unintentionally gluing his mouth shut, which understandably led to some complaints from Jeffries about the taste. Silver Bullet, 1985. The best Stephen King adaptations share a common thread, and that's a deep sense of nostalgia that unexpectedly warms you up even in the chilliest of scenes. Silver Bullet nails this feeling perfectly, mixing the youthful vibe of a coming-of-age adventure akin to Stand By Me with the thrilling terror of a classic werewolf flick. The film features Corey Haim in a role that breaks from the norm. He plays a paraplegic hero who zips around in the Silver Bullet, a super cool motorized wheelchair that doubles as a motorcycle. The plot itself feels like a playful nod to the slasher films that dominated the era, featuring a mysterious killer and a growing list of suspects alongside a string of grisly murders. While the special effects might have their shaky moments, the werewolf occasionally resembles a bear more than a beast. The film delivers unique moments of thrill. One scene has the young protagonist taking down a werewolf with nothing but fireworks, an undeniably cool moment that's hard to find anywhere else. And let's not overlook the Gary Busey factor. Cursed Werewolf Transformation, 2005. On the Los Angeles seaside pier, friends Jenny and Becky are warned by fortune teller Zella about a beast that feeds off the moon. Of course, they shrug the warning off. Later that night, Jimmy Myers and his sister Ellie, returning from a trip, crash into an animal and another car, attempting a rescue of the other driver, Becky. Amidst the chaos, a beast slashes all three. The next day, after an encounter that leaves Ellie disturbed by her attraction to the scent of blood, the siblings start experiencing strange symptoms. Ellie tries to shake off these fears and even touches Silver to prove a point to Jimmy, while he begins to suspect they're becoming werewolves. This theory solidifies when Jimmy reacts painfully to actual Silver, and the pair start putting the pieces together. They're cursed. As the full moon approaches, their transformations take hold. Jimmy, now stronger and more aggressive, confronts and beats a bully during a wrestling tryout. Meanwhile, Ellie connects the dots back to her boyfriend Jake and discovers that he's a born werewolf, but he was not the one who attacked them. Their situation spirals when Joni, a werewolf cursed by Jake, targets them, intent on eliminating Ellie and claiming Jake for herself. Ellie and Jimmy defend themselves against Joni's ferocious attacks. The confrontation ends when police gunfire takes Joni down. The siblings get freed of their curse when Ellie decapitates Jake with a shovel. Werewolf Transformations, Trick or Treat, 2007. While the werewolves aren't the sole focus of the film, the segment featuring them is so compelling that it's impossible not to mention it here. Anna Paquin stars as Laurie, a seemingly shy teen planning a Halloween night out with her overly sexual sister and their friends. Their night becomes pretty exciting when Laurie, dressed as Little Red Riding Hood, encounters a vampire stalker, who's actually a high school principal and secret serial killer named Stephen Wilkins. As the night progresses, the predator becomes the prey when Laurie leads Wilkins into the woods. There, he finds himself outmatched and is dragged to a Halloween party's main venue, where Laurie, along with the other women, reveal their true nature as werewolves. The group, having already dispatched their dates, begin transforming into their wolf forms. Laurie undergoes her first transformation, turning the tables on Wilkins in a gruesome finale where she kills and devours him. The revelation ties back to the opening scene of the movie, where a car nearly hits Rhonda. It turns out the vehicle was driven by the werewolves, now back in human form. This segment delivers a fresh take on werewolf lore with a solid transformation scene that, if expanded into a full-length feature, would undoubtedly climb higher on any werewolf movie ranking. An American Werewolf in Paris, 1997. Seraphine and Andy's werewolf transformation. In Paris, Andy McDermott's vacation suddenly becomes supernatural when he crosses paths with Seraphine Pigot, a mysterious woman with a dark secret. She was the daughter of David from the first movie. So yeah, after rescuing her off the Eiffel Tower, Andy finds out that he'd not really be able to do a lot of touristy stuff. The transformation into the terrifying begins at Club de la Lune. It's here, in the deceptive safety of a trendy nightclub, Andy witnesses the horrifying truth of his new acquaintance. As the club's atmosphere heats up, so does the danger. Seraphine, absent at first, reappears just in time to warn Andy, but it's too late. The club's owners, including the sinister Claude, reveal their true monstrous forms. They transform into ferocious werewolves and unleash a massacre on the unsuspecting crowd. The horrors of the night end after a while. Andy wakes up the following day at Seraphine's house, but the world breaks around him as he realizes that he's becoming a werewolf. Of course, this new identity brings a craving for raw meat, a trait he struggles to accept even as his situation spirals out of control. The climax of Andy's transformation happens during a bloody fight on a subway train, a public clash where the full extent of his werewolf form is unleashed. In a desperate fight for survival and a return to humanity, Andy faces off against Claude. Both are pumped with a transformative drug that throws them into full beast mode. As the train careers into chaos, Andy, now fully transformed, battles Claude in a visceral fight to the death, ultimately consuming the heart of the werewolf that cursed him. Daniel's Transformation, Werewolf, the Beast Among Us, 2012. Set in the late 19th century European village, Werewolf, the Beast Among Us has a werewolf capable of transforming for 3 consecutive nights during the lunar cycle, not just the full moon. In a desperate bid to end the nightmare, a small group of villagers seeks out a seasoned band of werewolf hunters led by the stoic Charles. Charles's team, consisting of the sharp Stefan, the fearless Kazia, the tough Hyde, and the robust Fang, agrees to take on the task and heads to the village. There, they team up with Daniel, an enthusiastic apprentice to the local doctor, Doc, who's been dealing firsthand with the werewolf's carnage. Despite the hunter's best efforts, the werewolf eludes all traps, which fills the townsfolk with paranoia and rage. The film, despite being a direct-to-video release, has commendable production values. The village setting and period costumes are fairly convincing, and the action sequences are well choreographed. Like the Wolfman remake, the visual effects are hit or miss. The practical effects and gore shine, particularly in scenes depicting the aftermath of the werewolf's attacks, and the werewolf's design is impressively realistic, which happens close to the end of the movie. However, the film's CGI elements, especially some action sequences, leave room for improvement, but they still outshine many larger budget productions. The Monster Squad, Phone Booth Werewolf Transformation, The Wolf with Nards, 1987. Fred Decker's The Monster Squad is a cult classic that serves up a delightful mix of humor and horror, featuring a ragtag team of universal monsters led by Count Dracula. Amidst the quirky chaos, the film delivers two quintessentially 80s werewolf transformation scenes. One happens in an ambulance and the other in a phone booth, where we see the Wolfman's claws tear through his sneakers and his anguished howls fill the air. Brought to life by the legendary special effects team headed by Stan Winston, these transformation sequences strike a deeper chord, showcasing the Wolfman's inner turmoil and despair about his cursed existence. While the Monster Squad isn't particularly terrifying and lands somewhere around the scare level of an average Harry Potter movie, it charms with its nostalgic nod to the classic Universal monster films from the golden era of the 30s through the 50s. Duncan Reger's portrayal of Dracula might not rival the iconic Bela Lugosi or the unparalleled Christopher Lee, but thanks to Winston's masterful makeup effects, it feels like a reverent homage to those vintage horrors. Moreover, the film features a group of young vampire slayers who come across as genuine, everyday kids. They're believable as they craft stakes in woodshop and melt down household silver to fight their nightmares, far from the polished performances you'd get from the typical child star du jour. Doctor Who, Tooth and Claw Werewolf Transformations. The 10th Doctor and Rose find themselves on the Scottish moors in 1879, right when they bump into a carriage transporting Queen Victoria. A downed tree blocking the train tracks to Aberdeen reroutes her amid fears of an assassination plot, which forces her to travel by road to Balmoral Castle. Seizing the moment, the Doctor, who poses as the Queen's protector, and Rose join the entourage, heading to the Torchwood estate, a place dearly loved by the late Prince Albert. Unknown to the royal party, the estate has fallen under the control of a group of evil monks led by Father Angelo. They've displaced the estate staff and put Sir Robert McLeish, the owner, in a tight spot to maintain their charade. The monks orchestrated the tree fall to detour the Queen to the estate, where they brought a man cursed with lycanthropy, aiming to infect the Queen and establish an empire of the wolf. Pretty ambitious, to say the least. The Doctor quickly catches on to the danger. He hustles to protect Rose, the Queen, and Sir Robert from both the monks and the werewolf. They find refuge in the estate's library, where the wood is infused with oil of mistletoe, known to repel the creature. Inside, they uncover clues left by Sir Robert's father, and Prince Albert reveals that the werewolf is not just a mythical creature, but an alien entity that's been passing through hosts for generations. The estate itself is revealed to be a trap for the werewolf, designed to use a telescope and the Queen's Koh-i-Noor diamond, reshaped by Prince Albert to amplify the moon's light and destroy the beast. Sir Robert sacrifices himself to buy time for the Doctor, Rose, and the Queen to set the trap in the observatory. They succeed in trapping and annihilating the werewolf with the concentrated lunar light. This episode's werewolf was brought to life through CGI, with performance artists outlining the werewolf's movements and reflecting on the challenge of acting against a green screen, which was shared by Pauline Collins in a BBC press release. Funnily enough, a deleted scene available on the DVD box set shows the Doctor and Rose, fresh from their royal knighting, dashing off to the TARDIS. Professor Lupin Werewolf Transformations. In the wizarding world, becoming a werewolf isn't far off from what you'd see in a horror flick. A bite from a transformed werewolf is all it takes to catch the curse. If bitten by a werewolf in its human form, one might pick up some wolf-like habits like a taste for raw meat, but wouldn't transform under the full moon. These bites and scratches always scar, resistant to magical healing, leaving a permanent mark of the encounter. Unlike the werewolf myths of silver bullets, silver doesn't harm these creatures. In fact, mixing silver with dittany can help heal a werewolf's wounds. There's also Wolfsbane Potion, which allows werewolves to keep their human minds during transformations. Though it's expensive and complex to brew, not something you'd find at your local wizarding shop. The transformation is agonizing, as showcased by the character Lupin in the Harry Potter series. Despite having friends like Sirius Black to support him, Lupin's ordeal during the full moon is visibly traumatic. His werewolf form visibly manifests the physical toll and inner turmoil he endures. The design of werewolves in Harry Potter brilliantly captures the essence of the werewolf lore while adding unique elements. They're portrayed as tragic figures, robbed of their former selves and thrust into a life of immense power but little control, perpetuating their curse with each bite. This condition isn't just a mythical curse, but a debilitating ailment, altering lives and isolating the afflicted from society. Werewolves often lead nomadic lives to avoid harming others, highlighting the stark reality of their existence. Being Human TV series. Cage werewolf transformation. In this BBC show, the transformation into a werewolf is so intense and traumatic that a normal human wouldn't survive it for more than 30 seconds. Initially, the heart stops and shrinks significantly, while the liver and kidneys fail because every organ has to change size. Bones snap and reconfigure themselves, and the throat and vocal cords tear apart and then reform, rendering the werewolf temporarily mute. The body tries to cope with the agony by releasing endorphins, but even the pituitary gland, responsible for this relief, shuts down during the process. As the internal transformation wraps up, the external changes start to show. Fangs push through the gums, nails extend into sharp claws, and the eyes shift to a predatory yellow. The spine elongates, pushing out against the skin and causing a hunched posture, although werewolves can still walk upright. The face morphs, extending into a snout, and thick hair sprouts all over the body, under which the skin darkens significantly. By the end of the transformation, the werewolf loses any semblance of human thought, fully succumbing to the beast within, typically marked by a haunting howl. In the midst of transformation, werewolves exhibit some control over their actions, like George, who managed to navigate from a school to his flat while changing. Some, like McNair, even display selective aggression, choosing specific targets based on past interactions, indicating a residual recognition of friend versus foe. Once transformed, werewolves lose all human reasoning and are driven by pure instinct. They become fiercely aggressive, a danger to animals, humans, and vampires alike. However, they don't attack fellow werewolves they're close to, showcasing a sort of pack mentality. For instance, George, upon transforming near Nina for the first time, instead of fighting, they bonded physically. Similarly, McNair and his adopted son Tom show a pack-like solidarity. Were feels like a breath of fresh air when compared to the traditional werewolf legends, and that's the reason why it's one of my personal favourites as far as werewolf films are concerned. Despite its modest budget, which sadly meant it flew under many radars, the film and its creatures should get more respect and love. The film blends various storytelling formats, including elements of a mockumentary, a court procedural, and found footage horror, thereby creating a unique cinematic experience. It starts with a family murder in the French countryside, which is quickly blamed on a beastly attack. The suspect seems to be a local oddball known for his unusually hairy appearance and wolf-like traits. Instead of following a detective, Ware introduces us to a lawyer who represents the accused man. She quickly senses something's off, suspecting her client has been wrongfully pinned for the murders. What starts as a compelling mix of character study and legal drama takes a sharp turn into full-blown werewolf action horror. This shift is unexpected and delivers a thrilling second half, drawing a parallel to the transformative nature of its werewolf character, from a misunderstood gentle giant to a ferocious monster. The film also deserves a shout-out for possibly the first ever shaved werewolf depicted on screen. I wasn't kidding when I said this werewolf was fresh. Ware is a genre-bending adventure that deserves a watch for anyone looking to see a different take on werewolf lore. So yeah, that was all in this one. You think I missed one of your favourites? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.